Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's your favorite paranormal investigator. My name's Tim Sudano. This is Paranormal Insight. Paranormal Insight. I promise I can talk. And today we're going to be talking about the mystery and history and conundrum and thoughts and what people actually saw in the skies or interpreted as being in the skies throughout our span as humans here on this earth. And the specific phenomena I'm talking about, of course, is comets. Probably should start off with that. So today we're talking about comets of all kinds, as viewed again throughout history. And let us start off with this lovely little image here. Again, I will preface that all images herein are AI generated. I did not make any of these. These are no one's of this presentation. So, what the heck is a comet? Now, most of us know this answer because we went to high school, or more accurately, we were all in the third grade at one point, hopefully. But if you weren't, and maybe you don't know, or maybe you lived in a small town or a cave, perhaps. I really couldn't tell you. But a small comet is exactly this. It is an icy body. That is, it is a rock at its core, or something very solid, at least that has joined together over time and become very, 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 very dense. So much so that it is able to attract smaller particles in space. Mostly, surprisingly, something along the akin to ice. Not necessarily water. Sometimes gases can liquefy if put under the right circumstances. Let me kick on a light here. There we go. I can't kick on that light because it's off. I'll kick on that light in 2 seconds. Much, much, much better. Well, a little bit better. Anyway, so a comet is basically a dirty snowball, and it attracts not only water particles and such, but gas particles of various types. It also can collect dust particles from asteroid collisions and whatever else is out there in the cosmos, that near and far, I should say, the near and far cosmos, that will lend itself to stick to something else out in the world. And especially if you have icy, sticky, wet, albeit frozen particles of gas or water vapor, things are going to stick to it more and more and more and more and more. And eventually you get this ball flying through space at a weird pattern, at bizarre ellipticals to our sun. So they go in and they come back out, and they go in and they come back out. And they have a tendency to be really brilliant, especially if you're in a part of the country that doesn't have any lights. Out in the country, you could probably see more stars, definitely, than you could in the, an urban or even a suburban setting, just because of the immense light pollution. So, would we see something like this shooting across the sky? Let's be completely honest. That would be, if that thing were anywhere near Earth, in reality, I'm talking about the picture over here, I'd be very scared. Because that looks like a giant, that could be very, very big. Especially if it's leaving a comma or a corona, a tail, if you will, off the back of it. A coma, not a comma, a coma. Coma tail. Or comet tail, if you prefer. So, yeah, anything that close, that big, unless it kept happening years and years and years in a row. Yeah, even Halley's Comet isn't that clear. I mean, it's a tiny little speck. I saw it back in the, whenever it came by. It was in the 90s, I believe. Anyway, I digress. So basically, a giant dirty snowball of some sort of vapor or rock that is accumulated and has this weird elliptical around the sun and burns off. That's what the tail is. It's the heat from the sun is boiling off all this vapor. So as it moves in, it'll look like that the tail is going to face away from the sun in whatever direction it's going. As a comet comes in, tail is behind it, like you might expect. As a comet goes out of our solar system, the tail precedes it. So it's almost like it's flying backwards, but it isn't. It's just boiling off at that much, that fast, that it's actually creating all this, burning off all that debris. Pretty cool. Let's talk about the various myths and what have you. Sorry, let me get my thing out of there. Nope, that's not it. There we go. So this again, AI, folks. I don't know what this is, but it's supposed to be hieroglyphic Mesopotamian, believe it or not. So way back. I mean, Mesopotamia was quite a ways back. We're talking pre-Egyptian. But ancient Mesopotamians and the surrounding folks typically recorded these events, believe it or not. And they cited them on little clay tablets, and that's what this little doodad here is supposed to be. You can see my cursor. Let me blow that up for y'all. Y'all apparently are from the South. Sorry for all those people from the South who I just offended. But so that's supposed to be a comet. I actually think they depicted them differently, but for the sake, that's what AI came up with, and I didn't have time to correct it. So they made note of it. Now, it also was it depends. You it really kind of depends on the culture that looked at it and what happened immediately upon sighting said comet. But a lot of them were seen as omens of divine wrath and disaster, that or impending disaster, if you prefer. So, there was a green comet that was recorded, I think. Oh my gosh, I want to say Eastern Asia somewhere, or was it Greece? Gosh, that's disparaging on our planet too. Maybe both. But there was a green comet, green tail, and it probably had a lot of what burns green on the spectrogram. Not sodium. Maybe not iron. Iron doesn't burn green, does it? It might burn green, actually. Now that I think of it. So it was iron rich, or at least the snow, the dirty snow of whatever compound was iron rich. So it was burning off. It was burning off green. Again, I'm not sure if that's the right spectrum color for iron green, but I think it is. But don't quote me on that. So it burned green, and there is a green comet to this day that we see up in the sky. But back before cities and the light pollution and all that fun stuff, it was pitch black. But for the moon, assuming the moon was even out that particular evening, and I saw a green comet, and the green comet was foretold. Well, of course it was foretold because someone probably saw it 100 years ago. And the green comet comes around every 2 or 3 or 4 years, something like that, between 2 to 4 years. And the green comet foretold the Great Wave. I think it was Japan. Now I think of it. The Great Wave. I think. That's a tsunami we always see pictures of in the older style of Japanese drawing and artistry. Kind of sharp corners and all that fun stuff. And we see a boat being capsized by the wave and a house being on the shore being completely consumed. And so it was a big, big typhoon tsunami kind of event. Green Comet was seen before that, and I think along the same lines, maybe not the same year. Beg your pardon? Sorry, been a long day. I think it was in Greece. Again, probably not the same year, but there was a check that Rome. I think it was Rome. Sorry, there's dust everywhere. It was Rome that had. Was it Vesuvius that blew? I think maybe it was. But it was a big volcanic disaster. Oh, we saw the green comet just before that. There we go. The green comet means disaster, and that's just one example because they all they were got kind of wary after the green comet, apparently, or similar disasters happened after seeing comets in general, and yeah, so comets were basically regarded as being rather uh, bad luck, to say the least, or bad things were about to happen to you. So let me get my cursor out of there. So yeah, let's talk. Wow, the AI just went freaking nuts on this. I don't know what kind of hieroglyphs that is, man. I gotta show you all of this. This is pretty funny. Um, I don't know. Some of the symbols look about right, but I mean that is almost Arabic. That is I that almost looks Chinese or Japanese. And well, I don't know what's going on with these. This guy's got problems. He's got hands coming out of his head and the whole thing. Okay, I'll stop laughing at the picture. So in Egypt, the comet symbolism related to deities, their vast pantheon of gods. And they often associated not just comets, but a lot of stellar phenomena with the god's will, and were often left up to interpretation by priests and whoever on else of the religion. Forgive me, my beard is totally in the way. I'm growing it long on purpose just so I can cut it. It's for a film coming up. I'll talk about that in a minute. So if you look at comets and you see one every year, every couple of years, or something like that, you're going to start building a calendar. And they come at all times of the year. That's the other. That's one interesting thing. They come at all different times of the year. But oh my god, so sorry. They they still had a link to chaos and or severe change. A comet was noted to precede the fall of the Egyptian Empire to Rome. Actually, they had a minor alliance, but Rome kind of took over. So that was foretold by a comet. And a few other interesting things along those lines. I think when we go from one pharaoh to the next, where a comet was seen foretelling that transition. So comets really reflect a lot of change, but also reflect a lot of chaos. War came after one comet. The one comet was reported to be red and yellow. I'm reading my notes, that's why I'm looking this way. Red and yellow, and that foretold of a coming war. And they did have a war, I think, with Phoenicians. Oh, my history's so bad, and they didn't specify in my notes. So that's a guess on my part. But it's interesting to note that the comet's going to happen and influence these things. Now, on the more supernatural side of things, we're what are we talking about? Are we talking about influences of energies because a strange celestial thing is passing through our solar system and futzing with our energies here on Earth? To quote some Newtonian science, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So ripples in the pond. If you want to take another, you know, tact on that, another bent, another perspective. Uh, so if this comet or a comet rips through our solar system And they move pretty fast, most of them. Um, they have to in order to be comets and not asteroids. I'll forget that though. But anyway, they do shoot through our solar system pretty quick, and they do create enough of a impact, so to say, on the environment of the solar system. They've actually been known to not only skew smaller moons. I think one of Saturn's moons got skewed by a near miss, but they're also known to actually, if they pass close enough, to leave wakes in the earth, in the topsoil of the different planets they pass. If not the topsoil, certainly the gaseous upper atmospheres. They're actually disturbed those to one degree or another, and it's been observed, which is really cool to me. It's like, wow, that okay. So that was a near miss. That almost took out Europa's moon or Uranus's moon, but whatever. Um, so, from a scientific aspect, yes, there are subtle changes. From an energetic, more how do I put that? Spiritual slash meta take on things where we, associate things without a lot of due process. Yeah, you could say there's probably an influence, especially if it's seen, especially if it's observed or you're expecting it. It's like, oh, look out, here comes comet number 7 with the green tail and the blue coma and all that fun stuff. It means the corn's going to grow upside down or something like that. But do these effects happen? I'd say they probably do, but probably not to the super effect that we humans have attributed these things. Because if you're looking at something strange in the sky like that, that doesn't come around that often, especially if you're one of our ancients, you're going to give a lot of intent and energy to that thing, and it will probably be reflected. Remember, we are interactive beings. Our fields stretch about 6 foot, our own personal magnetic bubbles. I'm not even close to kidding you. You can look this up. I think the CIA had a paper on it. Stretch about 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 6 feet away from us. If we extend our arms out all the way, our bubbles get even bigger. But they're malleable and they'll adjust to our dimensions, what have you. But roughly, you have a 6 foot bubble around you, roughly. And we communicate with each other whether we realize it or not through these fields, through this intent. They're just small biomimetic signals that bounce between every single person we encounter or are close enough to either feel influence or give influence to, usually in an even exchange. So could a comet affect that? If it's observed and given the importance of being a factor of change, yeah, absolutely. Let's also think on how these things were observed and who was observing these things. Wise men, shaman, high priests of a given religion. Egypt, for example, had like 1 or 2 people that were set. That was their job: observe the stars and report back. And every major empire of that era did the exact same thing. They had their wise men or their shaman or whoever, their holy people were out of one type or another, were out in the black watching the stars, trying to determine the story and fate and whatever else the gods and or the universe had in store for us puny little people on Earth, because back then we were the center of the entire universe. So take that with a grain of salt. Not with a grain of salt, but I mean, put yourself in that perspective. You're going to understand how we came up with all these weird things like comets are bad. Oh, it's a portent for this, that, and the other thing. Oh, look out, here comes change, here comes war, here comes famine, here comes the corn growing in upside down, as I mentioned before. But let's move on. We've kind of tackled that one to death. Can't get over these weird hieroglyphics. Okay. This is probably the worst interpretation of a comet I've ever seen. But here it is. I'm going to try and blow that up a little bit. There we go. I'm sorry they're very slide-like and very 70s. Looks like the old 70s slideshow. Wait for the ding, move the slide. Anyway, as I get that back on track, okay, that'll have to do. This is supposed to be a Chinese dragon. More or less there. But in China, back in the day, it's interesting to note that they have had one of the largest and most complete astronomical observation, records of observation in the world, even today. Beyond most societies that were intact or stayed intact over the years, over the eons, China kind of has a lot of cities and not cities, but cultures, as far as having the status the hierarchy in society they have today, more or less is the same one they had a few hundred years ago, a few thousand years ago. I mean, the leadership style has changed. There's no longer emperors per se, but that doesn't mean that they aren't one of the oldest societies on Earth. Anyway, so and again, they've been just stuck a guy out somewhere in the dark and said, "Watch the stars. Tell us what the gods are saying. Tell us what the universe is telling you." And they have a specific thing here. They had comets were described as broom stars. Broom stars kind of makes sense. A little comet ball, then a long streak, and kind of feathered out at the end. And they were thought to be sweeping the sky, cleaning up the universe, as it were. I thought that was kind of an intriguing association. And the reason the dragon's in that picture is because they were often associated with dragon activity. That is, these physical manifestations of the gods were cleaning something up. Something happened, they had to clean it up. And that's what the comet was. It was also, intriguingly now, we're getting to some interesting symmetry here across the eons and the societies and what have you. The ancient ones, including, where they say it also symbolized change. Sometimes it symbolized power, but usually it symbolized change. Well, now that's fascinating. That's pretty fascinating. Pardon me. The same idea. And I imagine the same results too. Nothing in my research was specific, but perhaps a war, or the death and the birth of a new emperor, or a change in power, or a change in circumstance, a disaster followed the sighting of a comet. They saw this as a symbolize of change. Super fascinating. So did Egypt so far, so did ancient Mesopotamia so far, and we know the Greeks and the Romans did the same thing. So that's both Eastern and Western astrological observations meaning the same thing globally way back then. That's just amazing to me because apparently we were pretty cut off, but some say we weren't, but that's a different podcast. Okay. So China says, yeah, back in the day they did, that it was a broom cleaning up the universe, the cosmos, the stars, what have you, which is amazing. Now, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. As we move on across the globe and across time and across societies, okay, I don't know, man. I'll show you this one. This is supposed to be Indian Vedic language, and it's a rough facsimile, but I guess that's what they were going for. I know I couldn't personally draw that better, but I don't know. So the Indian Vedics back in the day made references to comets, and the text mentioned them as I'm going to mess this up. Duhumaketu. Duhumaketu. Okay, that wasn't too bad. Duhumaketu were the smoke banner or a comet. That was the description, a smoke banner. Well, I found that very interesting because I don't know. For me, if I look at a comet today, the here and now, I'm going to instantly think, oh, it's dirty snowball. I don't see a smoke trail per se. If it were a meteorite or an asteroid or something like, a meteorite and a big one, smoke coming in, yeah, that totally makes sense. We've all seen that footage, seen examples of what that looks like. Absolutely, I could buy into that. So maybe they just assigned that thing, that image, smoke banner, to all astronomical, instances where they saw a ball of light followed by a trail. That kind of makes sense to me. I could be wrong. I could be mispronouncing that name completely, and they have a different name for meteorite. But, or word for meteorite, excuse me. But for the purposes of this thing, we'll say I'm right. And we're going to, as we look at this, we again find that, and this is kind of interesting, and it's not the only time we've heard this, that the comet, symbolized here by a weird fish with a C in it, I don't know what AI was thinking, but said comet was going to mean a bad omen. More change, more disaster on the horizon. And said omens would affect royalty, the kings. That's who it was for. And that's kind of where China went. That's where Japan went. I think to a degree that's where Rome went. And even Greece to a, I think. Egypt was a little more varied. It was more about the gods, which would interpret some sort of meaning for the pharaoh too, because they were supposed to be the representation of gods on earth, or the gods on earth. But I don't know. I think the Egyptians are a little more. They had a more modern-like take on their astronomy and their astrology. So that's right. That's my view of it anyway. So, am I an expert in that stuff? Absolutely not. But that is I maintain that it's interesting that across the globe we're seeing that the star, the smoke banner, or Humakatu. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry I got that word wrong, ladies and gentlemen. If I got that one word, which I probably did. So my apologies for that. But they affected change, and they affected specifically the kings and the royalty, the higher ups of the societies of the day. Well, now I think we're getting some here with this comet idea. So maybe it was affecting more than perhaps I gave them credit for. And I'm willing to admit that I'm wrong. But let's also take into consideration that they aren't just rocks flying through space. They're really brilliant. They're burning off all their stuff. They look really cool, but they're rocks flying through space. If said comets are crashing here onto the planet, I could see that change being a little more palpable, tangible, and then perhaps I'm coming at this from a surprisingly scientific viewpoint. But I mean, given that I deal with ghosts all the time, but and other paranormal things, but it still strikes me that that a rock that far away, even if you take the ripples in a pond, thought process to a something small affecting everything else around it, like ripples in a pond. Throw a rock in a pond, you get ripples, right? Everything smooths out eventually, so maybe there's something to it. But why would it affect the psychology? Perhaps I'm wrong there too. We don't know everything about the energies of the universe and things that are hitting us every day. We just discovered muons about 50, 60 years ago. Muons, just for you, so you all know, are light particles that bombard us, whether we want them to or not. They're shooting through us right now. They don't do us any real harm, but they are or light speed particles just blowing right through us right now. They're what are they called? They're just slightly out of phase, I think, but they're detectable, and we use them for processing the age of things, which is interesting. Kind of like carbon-14 dating, but it's a little more accurate. But it takes forever. I'm done with muons, so let's talk about comets some more. Okay, so we have the fish, the fish Vedic thing here. Wow. And we move on to, nope, that's not it. Yeah, that's it. Hold on, it didn't switch on my computer. There we go. We move on to the Greeks. Now, we talked about the Greeks a little bit. Now, early philosophers of the Greek pantheon, or not the Greek pantheon, Tim, early Greek philosophers debated the nature of comets, which is fascinating. Some saw them for what they were. They were, although they were wrong, they called them atmospheric phenomena. Now, like the Indian folks, they had one word for a comet, which kind of more resembles a meteorite as it's coming in. So my supposition, therefore, is that the Greeks did something similar. It's like, oh, we've seen those crash to Earth. That one just didn't do it yet because it's a long streak of light, So they probably assumed it crashed elsewhere where they couldn't see it. I imagine. That's a guess. But atmospheric phenomena, a lot of them. Others saw them as celestial bodies. They're on a better path. They're in the right ballpark, so to speak. But here we go again. They were seen as portents. I'm sorry. Now, they were seen as portents for both the good and the bad. So there was a good portent. Oh, I saw a comet on a Tuesday at let's say at 6 p.m. That means your corn is gonna grow right side up. Corn crop's gonna be great. I don't think they grew corn in Greece, but I'm just using it as a metaphor. But sorry, my desk is squeaking. But I appreciate the Greeks that they thought about it for what it was. I mean, just they made a really direct observation. It wasn't necessarily about what the gods were saying or doing or affecting. because they interacted with them way more than most societies. Greece interacted with their gods way more, like personally, like a lot. It was amazing. Anyway, let's move on to Greece's, I want to say cousin, but not really. Let's talk about Rome. Now, that's Rome. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking, man. They were going for something kind of classical, and they gave me this. But it's not bad, and we'll just go for it. Okay, so Rome, interestingly enough, and here we go again, were thought as portents, that signs of political change or the death of a leader, which is also political change. So, as an example, one comet, the comet after Julius Caesar's death, was seen as his soul ascending to the heavens. That's a nice thing, but you're just looking. Someone was looking for a sign, and the comet showed up a couple of days later. It's like, oh, hey, you know what that is? That's Julius Caesar's soul. Yeah, yeah, that's it. Yeah. So I don't know about that one. I think the philosophers and the seers and all those guys were just because they didn't interpret it. They never saw his death coming. A couple did. I think maybe. No, I can't remember her name now. But like a couple saw it coming, but you can almost guarantee that there's going to be an attempt on a leader, especially back then, if their ideas are unpopular. There could have been such a better representation of Rome, though, than this thing. Big pardon. So let's move on across the Atlantic Ocean to. Yep, that's what I think of when I think of Mesopotamia. I think the slides might be out of. There we go. That's better. I said Mesopotamia, didn't I? I meant Mesoamericans. I can't talk at all. I'm so sorry. What kind of podcast host am I? So here we have a temple with comets flying overhead. Actually, they kind of look like meteorites, with this one being in front of the cloud, especially. But let's see what comet lore in the Maya and Aztec world were saying. According to notes, I skipped something. That's why we had the long slide. So let's do Mesoamerica, then we'll go back and catch up. The cultures recorded the comets in their various codices and what have you. And similar to China, they were observing all the time out for eons. I mean, millennia, So they had a pretty good record of this stuff. But their interpretation was, as you might expect, ready? For something bad. Specifically, the gods were mad. Warfare was on the horizon, or some other omen or ill portent was about to befall somebody, usually royalty. A comet foretold the eclipse, the big eclipse. We'll hear about that story about the eclipse that stopped the sacrifices, the Mayan sacrifices, because the great god was finally satisfied. Now, I'm full. I am full. You're done cutting out hearts randomly and offering them. We saw the name. I'm totally blanking on it now. Apocalyptico. Right? Or Apocalypto. Apocalyptico? The Mel Gibson film. Well, that. Spoilers, that happened in that film. They actually have that in the film where they're cutting people open, offering the hearts up, rolling the bodies down the steps. It's gory. It's pretty gross. Historically accurate, I'll give them that. But the eclipse happens and everything goes in the shadow, and it's like, oh, we messed up. He's full. Yeah, that's it. The god's full. Okay, send this guy to go play with the soldiers. He can be target practice for the soldiers. And I don't think I give too much away because you're going to love it. It's a great film. But let's go back a slide. We're going to go back a slide and look at Norse. Whoops. Look at. Whoops. Norse mythology. Okay. That does not look anywhere near Norse to me, or Nordic, or anything like that. But I get what I have, and that's supposed to be a comet right there, and here's a little shed in a wet land somewhere, lots of scary shadows in the sky. This is supposed to be Norse mythology. You know, give me a shield maiden with, or Valkyrie or Thor himself. I mean, that's Norse, okay? I don't know what AI I was thinking, but you get what you pay for, which was, it was free. So, in Norse mythology, such things, including the sighting of comets, was, they had these fiery celestial events where I think they were experiencing a meteor storm versus comets per se. But they were thought to be, are you ready for this? Are you ready? 3 guesses. Signs of Ragnarok, or the end of the world. Comets often symbolize chaos and transformation. Well, what about that? Now we are pretty much all the way around the world, because our Native American brethren thought the exact same thing. If you take in the Mesoamerican account, you can translate that right north, because the Great Migration from the Bering Strait on down, yeah, you get where I'm going. So, they symbolize chaos and transformation, and bad things are going to happen. And so, maybe I am wrong, but I have not seen any direct or been shown any direct evidence that would say, yep, comets flying through our solar system mess stuff up. Guess we'll find out. We have a big comet or large astral body floating around our solar system right now, causing a lot of stir. Let's go to, and I can't wait to see this slide, because, I review them, they're this small, but when I get them here, they're a little bit bigger, and it's like, oh, okay. So, I don't know. Not what I would call Aboriginal. It looks kind of African to me, especially with the elephant. Let's call that Aboriginal, because that's a little bit closer. So we're talking about Australian Aborigines, specifically. They incorporated comets into their oral traditions and stories, and they often symbolized, need I say it? Yes, I do, because it's a little bit different. They often symbolize spirits or warnings. So, something on the horizon, something bad was going to happen. So it's halfway following that usual trend we're seeing in our ancient civilizations. Okay. So we not only went around the world, we backtracked a little bit, went back the other way and south, and we ended up in Australia, and they say the exact same thing. Comets equal chaos to one degree or another. Some bad thing is going to happen to one degree or another. And not always on time, because the whole Julius Caesar thing saw the comet happen after his death. And that's when they assigned, oh yeah, the comet's his soul. Yeah, that's it, yeah. My stupid lying guy impression there. Please forgive me for that. But let's, as we go through all this, and as I review my notes one more time, you're going to see this crop up quite a bit. Now, where it changes is when it comes to petroglyphs, not unlike this one, And hold on, I gotta find it in earlier paintings. So they've always been there. If you look at this, and this is supposed to be a comet, I think this is supposed to be a comet. I really don't know what AI was thinking with these circles in the rocks, but it's the closest thing to a petroglyph they gave me. So as we look at this, it's like there's always been a fascination with comets. I mean, they're weird. They look strange. There are these big commas in the sky, or comas. But you know, you've seen them all, really. They might change color varyingly. I mean, if one streaks past the Earth at Mach whatever it's going, goes pretty fast. But it's like Mach 11. It's way up there. It's pretty fast. But and we get a little rumble from it, yeah, then I can see, and it happens yearly or every 3 years or every 20 years, yeah, then I can see really getting scared by it. Maybe that's me, though. Maybe I need a near miss to really make me pay attention where something happening in the distance doesn't really affect me or phase me one way or another. Unless it's like a giant explosion or something like that. But none of that happens. Oh, there's another comet in the sky. I guess I'll tell someone it's going to mean bad things on the horizon to beware. I mean, better safe than sorry. I mean, if a priest is going to see this stuff all the time in the sky and see the same stuff every single year or every 3 years or whatever, and they work out the pattern, they're going to go, oh, just stuff flying around the sky. You know, this isn't, it's on a schedule. Oh, come on. I can't. So now we got to, man, the corn. Okay, so now I got to tell everyone the corn's going to grow upside down every 4 freaking years. Got to make a note of that somewhere. You see what I'm saying? The priests and the sages and the wise men and the wise people and all that shaman and what have you are going to put it all together. And they're going to go, oh, that's a rock in the sky. Well, probably didn't know that much, but this happens all the freaking time, so it's natural, I'm the only one looking up every single night. I'm the only one, so they're going to rely on me, and the leader, the king or the prince or whoever's in charge, he wants me to say all these crazy things that are going to make him look better as a ruler or fire up the people to back his play on the next war, and if it doesn't come, he has to inspire it so the prophecy comes true. And I mean, we've seen that play out time and time again throughout human history. So comets are getting the bad rap in my personal estimation. But I digress. We're talking about history of comets, and that was just my comment on history. We are moving on. Okay. So, that's Australia roughly. And then we go to, whoopsie, I can't do it won't work. There we go. Okay. This is supposed to be Polynesian and they're half right. AI is doing some weird stuff as usual. So here's a Polynesian representation. Not really, but on the right path, I guess. So the Polynesians were master sailors. I mean, Portuguese didn't have anything on these guys. Okay, they sailed these little boats everywhere, and they used the stars, and they would see comets, of course. And because they paid attention, they used them exactly as you might think. Oh, it's that comet in the sky again. Okay, we go that way when it's here at this point in the sky. When it's at this point in the sky, we go that way. Otherwise, we're going to hit those rocks between Island 1 and Island 2. Don't want to hit the rocks because there's monsters there. That's a guess. I really don't know if that was the case. But, our ancient people seem to just put nightmares in the middle of nowhere. Falling off the edge of the earth kind of a thing, So those are our Polynesian brothers and sisters. They actually had a better use for comets. It wasn't a portent of something weird. I mean, sometimes they issued warnings. It's like, oh, the fish are going to swim in reverse for a couple of days because the comet's here. but more often than not, it was interpreted as being an event in the sky that they could use as a guide, which I find refreshing. Let's pop over to the Middle East. That's not it. That's not it. There we go. Okay. Middle East. Good times. Okay, we're going to stick with this one for a little bit. Oh, you can't see it. How about that? Here we go. Middle East. I'm just, I don't know, man. So here it is, Middle East. They're not entirely wrong. This is like I don't know what this is, dude. It's a mixture of so many different things, but artistically speaking. But here's a comet in the assumed Middle East in the ancient times, slash biblical times. I stand corrected, but in that general vicinity. We have biblical texts. Excuse me. That reference fiery signs in the sky. Now, sometimes those are interpreted as comets, although comets aren't really that fiery per se. Meteorites sure are. Yeah. So I think, again, we're dealing with that interpretation. It's like if it's a streaky thing in the sky, it's got to be a fiery whatever. So that one's way far off. That's all. It hasn't reached us yet. It hasn't smoked yet. So it's way out there. And they were right about that part. Sure was. But three guys, you guessed it right if you guessed it the first time. Typical Middle Eastern texts called comets, harbingers of destruction and bad things. Lots of superstition around them. And lots of stuff related to them as far as bad stuff was going to happen. Dire warning, divine warnings and signs and thunder and lightning and cats and dogs living together and all that fun stuff. Thank you, Ghostbusters, for that line. That was a fantastic line. As we move ahead here, actually, I'll tell you what, we're going to take a brief, but too brief. Let's see. As soon as I figure out how to work my computer. There we go. We're going to take a brief look at some the station identification and a few commercials. So we'll be back in a minute 14. See you soon. This is the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and 105.3 in the Gulf Coast. UPRN talkradio.com. Esoteric programming at its finest.
Long ago in the ancient world, the Trebus Omnes Lux, later known as the Tridents, were celebrated heroes, defenders of humanity against unspeakable monsters. Today, they continue that sacred duty in secret, hunting the dark evils that lurk just beyond the shadows. They are the Trident of Light.
Follow us on Instagram at paranormal.insight. Stay informed on upcoming shows, ask questions, and see what chilling paranormal stories we're following. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube at paranormal_insight. Click the live tab to see our latest videos. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. My name's Tim Sudano. This is the second half of Paranormal Insight, and we're talking about comets across time and history and myth and folklore and all kinds of fun stuff. You may want to take a sip. There we go. Should have done that earlier off the air, but So, where we left off was here in the Middle East in biblical times, and for whatever reason. My little thing changed. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. Well, Okay. Oh, it's went vertical for some reason. Yep. Having trouble with the what's it? Well, that's okay. I'll just do this. Oh, that didn't help at all. Um, let's see. I'll do that. Okay, we'll do that for now. So this was the biblical times, according to AI, but it doesn't quite match up with what I know. But que sera. Now here we have a early scientist. Now in the early days of when science was really starting to come to the forefront, I mean, we're kind of dealing secretly in the dark ages, and even before that, when philosophers and inventors were coming up with things like Pythagoras and all those guys. So we're kind of between that time and the dark ages, and people were looking at what the heck are comets? Why this guy is holding a circular thing to his beard, I couldn't tell you, but he is. Um, he just is. So crazy stuff there. I accidentally hit the wrong button in the wrong window, and that happened. My apologies. So let me straighten that out. Let me do this and go like that. Nope, that didn't help my situation at all. That's okay. I'm sorry. I'm trying to futz with troubleshoot things on my screen because they're all cockeyed now. But as we, hey, I got that to work. As we look at our friend over here, they were just starting to really kind of look at it for real, really kind of observe without making assumption. However, it took a while. They questioned the nature of it, and they made better observations. They were getting more advanced tools like binoculars and not binoculars, I'm sorry, telescopes, even rudimentary telescopes, to modify and understand and observe the phenomena of a comet. So they were moving away from superstition and belief that it was a portent, a harbinger of doom, this comet in the sky, but and started to move to more scientific inquiry. And as they did that, they they still kind of fell into the trap of folklore to a degree. Um, and okay, here's another. I guess he's middle-aged scientist guy. I don't know what this guy's doing. Okay, so we still kind of had some superstitious stuff happening because the dominant religions of the day, as we move into pre-Dark Ages and into more like a pre-Renaissance era too. So as we move into all that, things had a celestial importance, but they were associated with the acts and will and influence of God and or his angels and or the devil and or the demons. So take that with a grain of really ironic salt because they basically did the exact same thing the ancients did when they had the pantheon of gods, and then they went monotheistic. And anyway, so across the cultures, comets were still powerful symbols of change, and they were still feared and they were still revered. But oh, look at the comet! Dare not look on it for longer than 3 seconds, or my cat will start barking. Whatever. I'm just making stuff up. But you get my point, I hope. And they gave them, and according to research, local priests and parish runners and reverends and what have you, monks, whatever, allowed people to create the narrative of what they were seeing in the sky. Now we're talking about a lesser educated public. I mean, maybe a third grade education on average. And as far as the poorer communities go, which was a vast amount of the people. Whereas today, at least in America and other Western cultures or cultures similar to America, we actually have a middle class that is really relatively well educated, and even our poorer classes are relatively well educated. Is that the so take into account that if you just have one class thin ribbon of people in the maybe the top 5% of wealth and education and you know stature, in the community or in the larger country or empire or whatever it was, you had a lot of, perhaps you had a few good logical thinkers in the lower echelons of a given community, but a lot of times you were dealing with people who were very easily influenced by things in the sky and people coming up with knee-jerk reactions to an event. This is a very poor representation of a comet, I have to admit. So take that for what it's worth. But what we have here is more like I don't know, a lightning bolt. AI just kind of just chucked it on, that's what stuck to its wall. But that's okay. But something strange and phenomenal like this, as an example, happening is, would be the thing that people go, oh my goodness, it's a sign. It's a sign. And I think that's largely where things went awry and why comets, even in the more advanced eras, albeit limitedly, as science was coming to the forefront, and I mean, very, very beginnings, very, very early, where people were, dressing like this guy. That's what we're talking about. So there was still a lot of superstition to overcome compared to, and when you see stuff like this happening, okay, well, it's a sign. But nonetheless, we finally, as we move into the medieval Renaissance eras, finally start moving into I guess, a more scientific take. However, as this picture would no doubt let you know, we have a bunch of people with sticks and pitchforks around a fire as a comet streaks overhead. Still have the rumor mongers, the less less educated certainly, but we also have the how should I politely put that? The hordes of humanity who did not polite at all. The hordes of humanity who did not get it. Okay, they didn't understand what they're looking at. It's a sign. They were still in that modality, that mentality. It's a sign. And so again, the comet gets blamed for plague, war, disaster. Medieval chronicles of the era would depict and show and espouse that a comet, if sighted, means bad things are on the horizon. No. We made a step forward and we took 3 or 4 steps back. Again, we're in medieval era. We're in and coming out of the Dark Ages. Now, one famous thing that happened, and it was scary because it was kind of big compared to most of the things they had seen, and it probably looked very similar to what they're showing here because I have seen it myself. This is an interpretation, I might add, of Halley's Comet, sighted and recorded, documented, I guess you could say, for the first time in the year 1066. And it was linked to the Norman conquest. So, again, 1 step forward, 4 steps back. comet, and Halley's Comet. Come on. That's a neat event. It is kind of big. It's not quite that big, but it is that spectacular. I'll say that. At least when I saw it, it was. Um, it's a disaster omen. Come on. I mean, so okay. Let me put this out there, ladies and gentlemen. If it's a disaster omen to one thing, is it like another omen to one culture? I'm sorry. If it's a disaster omen to one culture, is it the go signal for another culture, like the Normans? Uh, okay? We saw the comet. Go time. Jump in the boats. Get the berserkers ready. We're hitting the we're hitting the next country's shores in 14 days. Uh, I mean, I think that's a fair question. I think that's a very fair question, but I don't know. Perhaps I am wrong. Okay. As we move forward through time, we look at the Islamic Golden Age, an era of history. Hey, that's not working at all. Hold on, something went goofball. There we go. So let me call it up. Let's see what AI got. That is not the Islamic Golden Age. Nope, nope, nope. Not there. Wow. Okay, let's go back to the weird exploding story in this guy and call that the Islamic Golden Age. I don't know why. That kind of looks like a interpretation of older Islamic type city. I'm sorry, they didn't give me anything for it. Nothing viable anyway. I did skip a few slides it provided because they just didn't look right. So in the Islamic Golden Age, we had Islamic scholars made detailed comet observations, very similar to other cultures, and they kept such detailed records, not unlike the Chinese, not unlike the Mesoamericans. They were actually able to see patterns and build a library and of various comets and where they appeared, when they appeared, and all that fun stuff. So it was a step forward, and they were very precise. They were very precise. And they actually were that step forward, scientifically speaking, as far as those scholars were concerned. Let's move forward to the great thing, the thing, you're going to recognize some names in this next one. So this is the Renaissance era. As we all blossom and move forward in a unified step, theoretically, we have nope. That's kind of it, but not. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. That's why. Okay, sorry. Let's get the slides correct. Renaissance. I guess that's Renaissance. Yeah, that's Renaissance. So, yeah, it's being fun. Anyway, so here's a scholarly dude during the Renaissance era, writing stuff down as he observes a meteor being struck by lightning. I don't know what's going on in that image, but it's supposed to be a comet. If you ask for one thing, you're lucky if you get it 50% of the time from the AI. Anyway, as I move on, we have Tycho Brahe. His observations show that comets were celestial, not atmospheric. That's a first. That's a first. As far as documenting that fact that they are celestial objects beyond our atmosphere and not acting within our atmosphere. You see, that was the big concern. They didn't know. They couldn't judge distance that easily. I think personally, if the comet goes behind the moon, you're safe. But that's me. I mean, I know better now. I'm a child of the 20th century, living in the 21st century. Dated myself there. Not that the gray beard doesn't. So Tycho Brahe says, yes, they are astronomical celestial phenomena out among the stars, among the planets, which they had started to document, by the way. a little more accurately. And then we have a name you may be really familiar with, Kepler. Kepler kept advancing and moving ahead with these comets on, big pardon, not only astral bodies, but comets specifically. And he was just constantly in front of his telescope, and that's why they built him a telescope after him, because he was a consummate observer of the cosmos. And so is the Kepler telescope. I've seen some of its photos. It is remarkable. But we're making more steps forward in a scientific way, which I can appreciate. Now, these comets did make their way into modern art. Not modern, I'm sorry, Renaissance era art. And I guarantee you, this is not it. That's not it. Okay, we'll just stay in this slide for now. And guess what? Guess what happens in these paintings? Yep. They are symbols of divine will or fate and or dramatic. Beg your pardon, I'm so sorry. Dramatic portents, harbingers of something on the horizon. In a bad way. So a dire warning. A comet. Okay. As we move forward. Whoops. I'll try to move forward. I don't know why Mount Fuji's there, but it is. Across the globe, as cultures observe these I think they're rather miraculous little things. They're pretty big. But comets are amazing to me. But still, throughout the ages, right up to the edge of the Renaissance, and well into the Renaissance, I might add, comets were still seen as omens of war and plague and disaster. They continue to be seen in different art forms as, during a battle scene, for example. Oh, there's a comet there for fighting and war is going to break out. These are in paintings and wood etchings and whatever else. And, again, the public in general was kind of dumb. They're very, very, just had mob mentality, left, right, and center. To the castle, go get the monster. I mean, it's either that level of idiocy. I hate to speak ill of our past people, but comparatively, we're freaking geniuses to them. Anyway, still, they fell into the trap that the comet was a bad portent. We kind of talked about this a little bit. China and Japan had and I guess that's why this slide is here. Japan and China had, people who lived in little pagodas, just like on this hill here, observing. That was their job. They lived for it, kind of like a lighthouse keeper. They were the astronomers, man. And once in a while, they sent their messengers down, say, tell this to the emperor, tell this to the king, tell this to the princess. Who knows? Tell them to watch out. Their cat will start barking any old day now. But more than my silly little comment there was, again, real fear and superstition compared to the science. This is kind of, for me, where the Renaissance really just kind of bubbled and took most of the Western world to a much higher level intellectually, as far as the art and the science and everything. More your higher intellectual pursuits were severely elevated. I mean, we had thinkers and artists like Da Vinci who not only made beautiful paintings, but I mean, he was so revered. One artist, another famous Renaissance artist, and I forget who, always commented that he was jealous of Da Vinci because he always put blood in the veins of his creations. Like he could, not literally, but the creations were so lifelike in the image that you would swear that someone posed, and they did. No, he didn't have many models posing for him. Not really. It was all up here that he made most of his creations. But I mean, Da Vinci's awesome, and that's all I'm saying. But as one quarter of our hemisphere of the world starts blossoming, it seems other cultures have already had their golden age, are on a weird backslide, because pretty much, not entirely, but pretty much around the world at that time, everyone else is more or less in the Dark Ages still, clinging to older myths and legends and stuff about not only the cosmos, but the world and the land around them. But I digress. Let's talk a little more about comets. So, as we move forward, let's look at the African continent and the North. I'm sorry, African. I may have skipped something here. Yeah, here we go. I did skip something, but I'll get back to it. Many African cultures viewed comets as spiritual messengers or signs, which kind of makes sense. But the stories were often linked to the gods, not too dissimilar to the Egyptians that said, "Oh, okay, so the gods tell me, okay, so the comet's going right instead of left on a Wednesday, and that means the pharaoh's going to trip and stub his toe." And at one point or another, it probably happened within a week. I told you that's what the comet would say, and so I think we could generalize and take some basic lift from the Egyptian thing, and it basically translates to the same thing. But for the African folklore, it was not only a warning, but oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. But it was a personal message for a lot of things. Okay, did you see the comet on Tuesday? Yeah. Which way was it pointing? Oh, it was pointing to the right. That's your right. That audience is right, by the way, I think. Oh, okay. So it's pointing to the right. And what time of the day did you see it? Oh, the sun had just gone down. Oh, okay. So it's pointing to the right. Sun just gone down. And talk about you. You were facing what direction? I was facing west. Okay. So your goat is going to get sick in 15 days. Just be prepared for it. Get the remedies ready, because your goat's going to get sick. You don't need a sick goat. No one needs a sick goat. So keep an eye on that. That's just one possibility of a thing, of a reading of the sky. But they were personalized like that. So look out for your goat. Oh, okay, your daughter's gonna start going funny in one eye. I mean, obviously, there's an amount of observation here. When you go to a wise person or a shaman, they're going to go, oh, I've observed this before, and I can turn that into a prediction, or make a prediction, or give a reason to avoid said prediction, a bad outcome. But if there's a comet involved, you got to look out. I mean, a lot of your shamanistic type stuff, I mean, way back, I guarantee you there's a snake oil element to it, to one degree or another. I'm not saying that the herbs and spices and stuff they use in their poultices and medicines, I can't talk, wasn't effective, because we know that it was. But I bet you anything there's a little bit of snake oil in there on some of those predictions. Like, I'll rub a wet cloth 3 times around the left eye of the goat and it should be fine. Okay. The wise man said it. Better listen to him. Better safe than sorry. Now, as we move forward, we're going to get into the indigenous North American things. And I think that's what the slide before this was. Whoops. Oh, poo. Hold on. Nope. Yep. There we go. That's the indigenous stuff there. These slides are wildly out of order, and I don't know how that happened because they were in order before, but I digress. So, in indigenous North American comet beliefs, as my notes say, they verified stories connecting comets to spirits, change, and, yep, warnings. Oral traditions preserve these views quite well, and they were only very recently written down, although some tribes still refuse to have their oral traditions written down because they find it offensive that anybody can read a book. So, no, you're not going to read my stories. You're going to listen to my stories, and you're only going to be able to listen to my stories if you're a member of this tribe. Or if someone went outside of the tribe, off the reservation, or what have you, and told these stories when they really shouldn't have, because it's not their story to tell. It's the community story to tell. And I, as the elder, or I, as the chief, or I, as the shaman, have the right to tell anybody these stories, unless you're going to become, a person like me. So, and again, that's an older mindset, but even today, some of those tribes still kind of hang on to that. It's like they will not write down their oral traditions. Their oral traditions and their stories are so well known and so well, put together as a narrative that they have nothing gets lost. You ask if you're able to ask a great grandmother, aged lady, who heard the story when she was a kid, is this the same story you heard? Word for word. I mean, that's an amazing gift, really. But I got off on a tangent there about how no one writes down their oral traditions. But I digress. I mean, it worked for the Vikings. I don't know why it wouldn't work for anyone else. But again, here we go. Now, as we move forward in time and we look at some more advanced stuff, and you probably caught a glimpse of this. Aha, an old, printing press. Okay. Okay. I gotta show you guys this. It doesn't make any sense. It's a printing press that prints books. That's pretty funny. Beg your pardon. That tickles me to no end. That's pretty funny. So as printing and pamphlets and books and apparently machines that could print books. That's not how printing went way back when. Now, you want to know the story of how printing went way back then? Let me tell you the story. Each letter of each page had to be put in place. I'm talking stuff. This is a little wipe here, and at the risk of... Okay, so each letter was about that big, give or take, in a book. And you had to put each one and their spaces in with the proper punctuation, backwards and upside down, in order for it to print one page. Can you believe that? That's akin to the old school where you would have to handwrite everything from one edition to the next and make minor updates if necessary, but it was all hand done. Well, the original printing presses weren't too far off from that, except the letters were pre-written. That's really about it. They just had to be organized. Crazy stuff. Crazy times. I love history. Anyway, so as the printing press gets the word out on comets and astrology and pretty much all manner of information, we start to see that some of these books that get printed out are put out by scholars who are becoming, I guess you can call them elite scholars. They had a very specific discipline in astronomy or astrology or what have you. looking at the stars above and telling you what the difference between a moon, a planet, and a comet, so on and so forth. So you may recall back in 1066, a comet was observed, what would later be confirmed as Halley's Comet. Mr. Edmund Halley specifically predicted, and accurately so, based on past observations, not only by from his worldly predecessors, correctly predicted the comet's return every 76 years and confirmed it. That was pretty cool. That was a cool moment. So it became his comet. It's Halley's Comet. Sorry to those who discovered it earlier. But it was a milestone in astronomy because we confirmed orbit and orbits in general. Now, we already kind of, at this time, had an idea that everything didn't revolve around the Earth, that the Earth revolved and her planets revolved around the sun. We had that sussed out. Now, so we had the basic ideas of orbit. Our moon, for example, orbits us. They kind of figured that part out. And then they thought, well, if that's an orbit, if planets orbit the sun and the moon orbits us, what's a comet doing? Is it just flying around willy-nilly? No, it'd be more like, well, willy-nilly. It'd be out there doing whatever it wants to do. But no, it's predictable. And Halley put that together. He said, on this day at this time, we're going to start seeing the comet in the sky. A few days later, it's going to be super prominent. And a few days after that, it's going to be weaker again. But the comet's going to switch because it's moving away from the sun. And he predicted every single one of those moments quite accurately. I think he was off by a few hours on one thing or another. But, Halley nailed it because he took the time to observe past observations, no matter how old or obscure they were. And, that's a heck of a puzzle to put together. I gotta tell you, especially if you're dealing with ancient reference material that isn't always one accurate or two, not flowerly put. Flowerly put. Today's exercise is flowerly. See, I can't say it anymore. Where the language was flowery, is what I'm trying to say. But so he was able to do it. Kudos for Edmund. That's good stuff, Mr. Halley. But the symbolism in Renaissance culture, as things move forward, and we're kind of bopping between certain centuries now, and going backwards even a little bit, we're still dealing with what they meant. And what they meant held. Now, here's the change in the Renaissance era. And, sorry, let me get out of the printing press here. Yeah. Okay, I'll stick with this. It's a little more advanced than I wanted. So actually, let me go back here. Renaissance. Okay. So back in the Renaissance era, again, we had to step back in time a piece. But one thing changes, for the most part. For those who are able to read books, the comet still holds that more supernatural, primordial fear response. It's a portent of something horrible on the horizon for either an individual or a country or a leader or the world. As we move and we move on. Okay, so we're at the weird book printing press. It's still just floors me. So I cannot recall what's after this. There we go. So this is supposed to be a telescope. Didn't I mean, I get it. It's a little cartoony, but I get it. So telescopes were becoming a little more commonplace, but the large telescopes from observatories was really the thing. That was the big deal. They weren't that powerful, but they could still observe things a bit more closely, a bit more carefully. And because of the motion of our planet meets the motions of other planets, we were able to keep a planet in range for quite a long time. And so too is the case with comets. Now they were studied more. In 1910, I forgot to mention, in 1910, when Halley's Comet came back as Halley predicted, it still had this, I don't know, I guess, while natural, still at the same time, kind of unfounded fear. They thought the comet was going to hit the Earth because it was so large in the sky. Probably at one point it might, but I don't think its orbit is along that plane, for starters. But, yeah. So, 1910, he makes his thing, and, it opens up the scientific world even further than the Renaissance did. People were getting telescopes left, right, and center. People were going to school to learn the sciences so they could look through these giant telescopes at the various observatories, which there weren't very many of. In fact, I live in my town. I have a hill behind me called Mount Hamilton. I say behind me because it's literally that way, that cardinal direction. It's on Mount Hamilton, and on Mount Hamilton is the Lick Observatory. It is the first ever observatory in North America. At least in North America, yeah. First ever one. And it's old. I've been up there a couple of times, and it is old. They have a new one right next to it, but they kept the old one, and the old one's still pretty cool to look through. I gotta tell you, it's pretty neat. It'd be, the glass is a little faded, the mirror's a little foggy, but it's still pretty cool. And to think that they had to make all those calculations pretty much on the spot, on the fly, up there. There was some stuff they shipped in, like the lenses and the mirrors and stuff, but they had to build that pipe that became the telescope by hand. Assemble it up there. I think it came like a kit in like 3 or 4 different pieces, the shipments rather, and we're talking bolts and welding equipment and all that fun stuff. And basically, they were homemade, basically, with the exception of some of the important parts like the lenses and the mirrors. But although I do recall a story that the main observational lens broke or was damaged somehow, that the human eye looks through, and so no one can use it for a while. So one of the guys figured out how to smith a new lens, and they used that for a little while, and I think it was out of someone's glasses. I think so. I think that someone just said, "Well, I know the shape, and we got this piece of glass is roughly that thickness," so he worked it, he polished it, and made it work. I think it was temporary though, because they got a real replacement piece like 3 months later. But some guys are still able to make observations through the telescope, which is pretty cool. Okay, back to the real thing though. To the topic, rather. The yeah, that really did happen. But anyway. Okay, so while telescopes fueled fascination with science, it still had more of a mystery to it. Like, what's this weird thing traveling through space? Why don't planets look like that? Why don't other stars look like that? Why don't moons look like that? What is happening to a comet that we don't understand? So this you can kind of this might be one of the first instances, although certainly not the first. Of I guess you can call it media manipulation, because a writer took a guess that the comet was leaking poisonous gases that were going to seep down to Earth. A writer came up with that. Leave it to a writer. But a reporter, actually, a journalist, said, yeah, that's how I took it. That's why I took some weird explanation as I was speaking to an astrophysicist somewhere at a bar. Yeah, this poisonous gas is all over the place, and yeah, they're gonna rain down Earth. Okay, I gotta go. Yeah. So that's it. It's also just a little teleplay in my head that I decided to put over the airwaves for all of you to see. My embarrassment knows no bounds. Um, Moving on. So, as we moved forward in time, as we got a little bit more scientific, yep, we went back in time on this. We still, again, held on to some scientific premises. This is a weird one for me, this little picture here, because we're in the colonial times by the look of it, although the colonial gentlemen, and maybe we're looking at fraternity of some sort, because they're all seem to be wearing robes. But one guy's the guy speaking has a microphone, and they appear to have some sort of projection of the comet right about there. And even have a little owl in the corner. I don't know what's going on. I don't get it. But that is our scientific, like the meeting of the minds kind of a thing. So comets, while still holding on to that stigma of being a bearer of bad news, a herald for the ill things that come, it further, as things got a little more, as we started to understand more and more, they actually ended up being romantic inspiration, poetry, novels, paintings, obviously, but poetry, novels. I mean, the Comets Delight. That was one title that I remember. It's not in my notes. The Comet's Delight, and the Comet's Delight basically revolved around a weird poem. Basically revolved around the comet catching the eye of two lovers, star-crossed lovers. Well, these in this case, comet-crossed lovers, and they were on opposite sides of a given country, maybe the U.S., but they both went to the same university or something like that, where they held a talk. Maybe it was a convention of some sort, where they held a talk, and they ended up sitting right next to each other, and they ended up falling in love with the same aspects of the comet and announcing it. I love that color of the comet. It always reminds me of, yeah, me too, same here. So the me too's and the same here's leads to love, and they named their first son Haley after the comet. It's a cute little story slash poem. But anyway, let us move on. But yeah, the comet is coming into its own. It's moving away from the thing of fear, the embodiment of disaster, to a more romanticized thing, which is, I guess, good for the comet in general. But let's not forget, it's a rock in space, pretty big rock in space, going pretty quick. That's really about it. But we humans are strange. We must give it panache. We must give it, gravitas. We must imbibe it with imbibe it. Okay, we'll go with imbibe it with our fears and our loves and our hopes and our dreams and all that fun stuff. But again, it's still just a rock in space. But it is a spectacular rock in space. I will admit that. It is one of the more phenomenal visuals in the night sky. So as said interest is romanticized more, it also inspires more scientific, legitimate interest, and people start studying it. Now, as we move into the 20th century, and I fear to see what the heck this light is. Oh, hey, it went there. Oh, hey, it went backwards. Okay, we got interpretive. Okay, we got a little interpretive with this one. This is an Escher kind of. I don't know, man. I don't know. AI was on the crack today. Man, I don't know. I don't know what's going on, because I got an electric telescope observing a Sputnik looking comet, and a weird little hand reaching through a mirror, on another kind of device, telescope-like device somewhere in the country. Because, hey, when I go out to the country, I bring my electric telescope and a mirror and something else. Okay, well, enjoying the acid trip that AI provides us every single day. That's a weird one. Supposed to be a film, believe it or not. But as the comet becomes popular in movies. Now we all remember Day of the Comet, where everyone gets zapped except a couple of teenagers and a few others who were inside at the time, not observing the comet. And it was a big deal. It was all over the news. Oh, we gotta go look at the comet. Pardon me. So anyway, the comet becomes the villain yet again in cinema around that time, because the comet's radiation, as it passes very close to Earth, nukes or basically toasts and powderizes. Powderizes? It turns people to powder. It just powder. That's it. Erases all their moisture or something. I don't know what's going on. Dogs survive, cats survive, mice survive, birds survive, but only humans are affected for some reason. Flaw in the logic. But that's okay. That's what makes movies fun. So the exception are those who were inside when the comet passed over. So sorry. I'm laughing and yawning at the same time. So in this film, again, not to give anything away, but I will give a spoiler alert. In the film, we have two kinds of survivors. Regular human beings that are going in full survivor mode pretty quick. And then we have mutants who were lightly exposed to said radiation and driven mad and cannibalistic. Not zombie-like per se. They're a little more intelligent than that, but all they want to do is eat the living or the non-mutated. So you got to deal with those groups. And at one point or another, they get their hands on a couple of Uzis, and they never explain how that happens. It's a whole bunch of fun, enjoyable 80s film at its finest. Night of the Comet. As we move on along, whoops, I went backwards again. More and more advanced space programs and space observation programs come into play. And so we kind of know the story from here, but it becomes more of a point of pride. Oh, we've observed this about comets and this about the cosmos and that about the cosmos. What have you got? Country number 7. Well, we have a huge interest in comets and meteorites and astrology. Look at all the people out in the street there. And this is taken, I don't know what the hell this is supposed to be. I'll be completely honest with you. It's a black and white film. And maybe that was supposed to be Day of the Comet. I really don't know. AI just slings things and certain things stick to the wall, But as we move forward with these ideas, that is a spooky shot, I must say. I don't know what nuclear winter is happening there with the moon overhead, but there's no comets involved. But as we move ahead, okay, more black and white stuff. I don't know what's going on. There we go. Okay, disaster films. Gotcha. Okay, let me back up a pinch here. So, whereas we had the general public being paranoid about comets back in the day, in the more modern times, they are excellent fodder for horror films, or even kind of funny horror films, but comets altering the species, or a species, or being home to a species. That happened before. I think that was Invasion of the Body Snatchers, if I'm not mistaken. A passing body, either a comet or an asteroid, expels something, it gets to Earth, and so we were overrun by aliens. Good times. As we move out of fiction and into proper science, we find ourselves able to go out into the stars and grab or a piece of or land on a moon, a comet, excuse me. And the moon too, but a comet. And of course, I'm talking about Rosetta and Giotto, those two satellites that went out and actually captured the gas from the comet and took very close, detailed photos. And they found all kinds of great, crazy, wonderful things among them. And I will read, if you will forgive me. Giotto, if I'm not mistaken, successfully returned from the first up close mission images of a comet nucleus, and revealed that the comet's nucleus was just this dark mass of nothing, just dense rock that was black or without any light really, and everything around it that was light was the stuff that was burning off of it, as we discussed already. And it even got damaged by the dust plume as it was leaving. And you may recall some of the footage. I think they just had still photos, but they stitched together a little 10-second segment as the comet moved away. It was pretty cool. And it was pretty neat. Rosetta's mission was very similar and also suffered damage from the micro pellets coming off the comet as it pulled away, but got even more information on what the structure of a comet really is. And now here, we're in a very modern take and era on the whole thing. So there's all that, and then there's the next step, which is Levy 9. I should say Levy 9 is an event, not an actual satellite or satellite mission. However, a satellite did catch the aftermath of what a comet did, and this is called the Levy 9 or Shoemaker Levy 9 impact. What did it impact? It impacted one of the larger planets, if not the largest planet. In fact, it is the largest planet in our solar system to date, and that is Jupiter. It smacked into the back end of Jupiter in 5 chunks, or maybe it was 9 chunks. But it was so devastating, and I wish these pictures really pointed that out, but they kind of do here and here and here. These are the scar points left over from the impact. And this is Jupiter, folks. Okay, you can fit 10,000 Earths inside this thing and probably still have room left over. So to say that Jupiter's small is a vast understatement, or that Jupiter's large is also a vast understatement. It's gigantic. And we had the Shoemaker-Levy 9. It was 9 fragments heading into our solar system. Now, this is the same comet at one point, but it broke up, and they were worried about it. And if Jupiter wasn't there to snag it with his gravity, it may have been disastrous for us, because these things were the size of our planet at minimum. And Jupiter grabbed them and took the hit. And they also confirmed that Jupiter probably has a solid mass at its core, which makes sense. Otherwise, the gases would just be everywhere. So, but they confirmed that. They kind of confirmed it for whatever reason. I mean, we all knew that already. It just makes sense. But Jupiter's gravity snags these 9 points, and it left initially what looked like bruises. No kidding, bruises on the surface gases and the swirls that we know so well. and actually created a second little storm at one point or another because one of the fragments spun in weird. But it just it these holes in the gases where the comets impacted looked like bruises on the face of Mars and Jupiter rather, and it was impressive, scary too. So maybe our ancients were onto something. Maybe comets should be viewed with a wary eye, with a nod and a wink and a, give it a little more respect, perhaps. Maybe it isn't just a rock in the sky, as I've been saying in the past, but they are something that is potentially disastrous in and of themselves. And I think maybe, just maybe, that's the reality of those ancient fears. It's like, oh my God, is that going to hit us? It could hit us. Gosh, I hope it doesn't hit us. Will it affect everything else around us? And maybe that's where we came up with the idea that these things in the sky, these whooshing, whirling, dangerous looking, sometimes beautiful, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong slide button there, could be potentially disastrous for us. This is actually a pretty good one. This is more of a meteorite, really, but I still think it's pretty neat. And this is a disaster movie that we've all seen as the near miss happens. But it's a real concern. Even with the current visitor we have to our solar system in 3i Atlas, we are. I swear you can make a drinking game out of that name, 3i Atlas. Anyway, just watch the Instagram or the internet or the TikTok or something. Someone's going to talk about it. Take a shot. But I'm kidding. Don't do that. Please don't do that. Do not do that. But this is what people were afraid of, that image. Of course. You don't know how far away this thing is. They didn't know about it for like a couple thousand years, that it was an astronomical event way out beyond Earth, typically. Have we had our near misses? Yeah, we sure did. A couple, maybe 5-10 years ago, we did. Cameras aimed it straight up in Australia, zoomed in a little, caught this, I think it was about a mile wide, give or take, rock, meteor, not a planet killer, but a city killer kind of a deal, and it just skimmed right by us between Earth and the moon, and favoring being close to Earth. I mean, they got a pretty decent image of it, this thing going tumbling on through. Just amazing. But yeah, this is the fear. This picture here. This is what our ancients and what our modern people or scientists even are afraid of. In fact, that's what ATLAS stands for. Asteroid tracking. Oh gosh, something. I forget what LAS stands for. But observational. No, astronomical something study. I can't remember. I forget. The terrestrial. Anyway, it means they're tracking satellites that could, space, bodies in space that could be dangerous and heading toward Earth. So, glad it wasn't. Glad it isn't so far. You get a lot of strange things. Okay, let's dive into that just for a moment. I got a few minutes left. So our 3i Atlas worry is being compounded by by people who are claiming to be remote viewers. Now, not necessarily the remote viewers themselves, although that has happened a couple of times, but they have said, I looked in and I see it's being controlled by intelligences far more advanced than our own. Some say there were pods of hundreds of thousands of invaders ready to pounce. Some say, it's just, this is how they get around. They do slow observations. They just look like a comet so they don't interfere with us. Okay, that's very Star Trek and all, but yeah, I think they could probably not give a crap about that kind of thing because I mean, what kind of that's a hell of a blind. I'll say that. That's a hell of an observational blind. Well, let's study the solar system at 233 million miles an hour. Sure. Yeah, that's a good idea. Rocket it on through. I mean, as far as the solar system's concerned, that's a reasonable drive by. But I mean, look how fast that thing's going. That thing's going pretty. It's going on a pretty good clip. But I don't know. I digress. I think maybe we're just looking for a re- a reason to have these things. A reason. We're looking for a reason more beyond what is being provided for us. Well, I like to look to the future, and I have this fun little thing here. I came up with this. I have to admit, AI did a good job on this one. Um, whoops. At the stage, there it is. Oh, I got to collapse it here. But we have a Star Trek kids. They're all wearing Star Trek colors. I thought this was the best. And they're learning about outer space in a futuristic classroom. I thought that was pretty fun. And I think maybe that's where we need to really just kind of, you notice they have some disaster stuff happening back here, though. Look at that. That's kind of crazy. But, maybe that's where we need to look. I think we need a more young scientists and stuff to come into their own and develop their fields in astronomy and what have you. That they're going to be the ones that really give us the more in-depth answers. Maybe we want to hear them or not. But I think that might be the more conclusive idea. Now, yes, they're big dirty snowballs in space. They're flying around. They're making our lives, interesting. And we will continue to observe them as we do. But hopefully now, whoops, I hit the wrong button. Hopefully we won't go too far and start making up stories again. Kind of like some of these guys have been doing. Oh, the thing stopped twice, made a left turn, asked for instructions at Mars, and then proceeded on. They went backwards for a while, disappeared off the radar. Well, these things happen. We don't have the best systems, and we do, but I mean, they're not infallible. And it's strange things are going to happen. We don't know what's happening out there. We could barely identify with, what our moon's made of, for crying out loud. Anyway, I digress. My name's Tim Sudano. This has been Paranormal Insight. Today we talked about Comets Across Time. I hope you enjoyed it. And we will see you next time on Paranormal Insight. Have a good rest of the week. If you have a paranormal experience that you would like to discuss on the show, please email us at paranormal.insight.podcast@gmail.com. That's paranormal.insight.podcast@gmail.com.